We need an African political unit that can guarantee the defense of the black race.
Museveni has sent a tough warning to DJT, Donald J. Trump, and to Africa. And this video is not a praise song. No, it's not. I'm not praising Museveni. There's some ideologies I don't like about Museveni, but some things when he talk, it resonates with what Africa wants. Now,
Venezuela, I don't know what they are fighting for. I'm still watching, studying it. The Americans are saying that some of the Latin Americans are sending drugs to the U.S. But whatever the case, we shall find out, we shall learn more. But whatever the case is, you can see the gaps, which I'm telling you about. Because the Americans are operating from 4 dimensions. They're operating from sea, they're in the sea. The Latin Americans are not there. They don't have a navy. Then they can come with air force, and then space. They're in space. Now they are trying to come on land, which of course is very risky also for the Americans. There you come near, because even me, who has got a short range, I can harm you. But there you are at an advantage. You are seeing me in space. I'm not seeing you. You are in the ocean. I'm not there. I'm here. So the issue of the strategic security of Africa is very crucial. East African Federation, I'm glad the East African leaders have never given up. Even when we were last in Arusha, they appointed me as an advocate for the Federation, so that we are able to unite our land space, unite our sea space, have more resources to be able to build capacity in the 4 dimensions: on land, at sea, in the air, and in the space. Good space. Must go to space. We can't remain here when other people are in space and you think we are clever. Dancing and watching European football clubs. It's very, very risky for you people. So you should wake up and wake up the young. Yes, the young generation should have pleasure, but also they must have security, a secure future. And they have all the potential, because like East Africa is very strong. Because we can use Swahili. They are the same groups. You have Kenyans like Nyangweso. That Nyangweso is a Kenyan. He's here. All those Samias are from Kenya. Then we have Congolese. Also here, Banyarwanda, they are all. So East Africa is a very powerful unit for the black race. Yes, you can have smaller countries in the world, like in Denmark, but they all have a center of gravity. When they're in trouble, there's a big boy like the US to defend them. Now the African race have no center of gravity. And you are here just dancing in Pakachin. Very risky very risky. I was young like you. I would also dance, swing girls like this. But I would also remember to fight. Fight study, fight, work, and dance once in a while. But the problem is that you are now dancing all the time. Like Latin America, you can see Latin America the way it is happening. Why is Latin America miserable? And yet in terms of natural resources, it's actually much richer than the United States. If you look at the water, you look at the minerals, you look at the forests, Latin America is richer than the United States. Why should the United States be more prosperous than Latin America? Because of that difference of integration. When the American colonists separated from England, they formed the nucleus of the United States. The 13 colonies, they formed the nucleus, then they have been adding on. That's why in America you can easily succeed if you are a businessman. Because if you are in New York, you produce a product, you can sell it all the way up to California. 300 million people. Now in Latin America, you are in Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, you are here. If you produce a product, you can't. How will you succeed? Here in Africa, if I produce a product to go to here, I must negotiate. To go there, I must negotiate. That's why we had to try and revive this African community. Now, but there's also the issue of strategic security. That's why for us we support the Federation of East Africa. Because as we speak today, the Americans are on the moon. The Chinese are on the moon. The Russians are on the moon. The Indians have gone to the moon. You fellows, we are here. We are here on Earth, here. The Europeans are looking at us from space like here. They are seeing us, we don't see them. This is very dangerous. And you have all these Katendes, all these fellows, influencers. What are you influencing? Why don't you say, you people, you are in danger? People are on the moon, we are here. They are seeing us, we don't see them. But can Uganda and the Americans, they have been saying so openly, they say for them, they want to be superior in land forces, superior on land, superior at sea, the Navy, superior in Air Force, superior in space. Where does that leave Africa? Africans are here, dance mpaka China. Yes, you dance if you want, but please, look at your future. Where is your future? How will you be safe? How will you be safe in the world? So that's why you can bring my tablet. Can you bring my picture? Nikuli. I'm lucky to see this Genzi Wanange. Let me see me Wanange. Let me find Change. Bring my picture. Wanange Katonda Jari. That's why we was talking of the East African. For economic prosperity, it must be economic integration in East Africa and the whole of Africa, a common market of Africa. We need a common market of Africa. We have started, and we have got what we call CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area, so that we can trade. The market is there. Ate wewe wa Africa wano n'abantu abalala obewunya. The Chinese are 1.5 billion inside China. But you find the Chinese dying for more markets. But now akawumbika mu China. Mwate barwani nakatala kafe akawa abantu milioni 5. Somebody with 1.4 billion people is still hungry for more market. You, of a smaller number, you are not even bothered. Dance back at dance back at. Are you not an endangered species? Why don't you see that? Why would the China get worried? Yet he has already got 1.4 billion people inside Abamugurako. You are not bothered, you are just seeing. So, that is for economic prosperity, but there is a strategic security. Because with the economic integration of East Africa, of the common market of Africa, we shall deal with the economy. Businessmen will have a market where to sell, and they will invest more. And if they invest more, they create jobs, the jobs we are talking about. Because if I'm a businessman, I sell more, I expand, I create more jobs. But that one does not address the issue of army, because the common market doesn't involve army. Defense. We need an African political unit that can guarantee the defense of the black race. That's why we have been talking for the last 60 years of the East African Federation. East Africa would have the capacity to go to the moon and check on what those fellows are doing there. The moon is a common property. Mukora chiwano, kumwezi. Nefe katuli wano, tuli dance mpaka chini. People on the moon, they are looking at us like, babite ebinyomo, these insects which eat sugar. The insects, emunyo bete chumurgan. Warwe biuka ebidia sukari. Ebinyomo, tuli wano ebinyomo, batulengala bulengezi. Oyinza kuleta dumu n'ofuuyira n'ebifo byonna n'okutegeera kibitegedde ani abisi. So this is very dangerous. When you hear America, the people whom you call Americans now are Europeans who went and took the land of the Indians. Because the Indians were stupid, they were not organized. And the Europeans had already tried to take our land. Those who came to South Africa, they are taking the land. In South Africa, in Zimbabwe, even here in Kenya, in the 1950s, we were learning of something they were calling the White Highlands. Part of Kenya was regarded as White Highlands. That's what they were teaching us. But what happened at that time, there were changes in the world which favored us. By 1900, the whole of Africa had been colonized. Our stupid chiefs had failed to defend us because they were fighting among themselves. So the whole of Africa had been colonized. But what happened was that in 1912, the Africans in South Africa formed the first resistance movement. The ANC, they formed modern people now. Actually, it started in the US, the black people there. Some of them started Pan-Africanism. There was a man called Marcus Garvey, another one called something else, I've forgotten their name, W.B. Du Bois. they started talking about African freedom, when the whole of Africa had been colonized except for Ethiopia. So in 1912, the Africans formed the ANC to resist. Then in 1917, we had good luck. Russia was taken over by communists. These are where people who had a different idea. They didn't agree with imperialism. The communists, they took over Russia. So they started working with our anti-colonial fighters. And then also, African witchcraft worked. Because the Europeans, because of their greed, started fighting among themselves. The First World War. Our African magic worked. They started fighting among themselves. The Germans and the British and all that group. And they mobilized our grandparents to go and fight for them. So our grandparents went and saw, oh, okay, this is how you fight with modern arms. So by the time they ended this First World War, their quarrels didn't end. Then they started the Second World War.
I think it's high time as African countries, we start thinking twice when we are dealing with America. You see how he has attacked Venezuela. Or is it Venezuela? Yeah. So, and there's a lot of worry again towards Africa because a country like South Africa does not sit well with America. Uganda doesn't sit well with America. So Burkina Faso doesn't sit well with America. And I think this speech from Museveni speaks loudly. Now, this video is about power literacy. Okay, it's not about ignoring the contradiction of Museveni. You know, he's a double sword person. He talks this and do this sometimes. Because Museveni has survived Cold Wars geopolitics. Museveni has survived Western-backed insurgencies. Museveni has survived IMF and World Bank pressure, NGO regime. So you don't survive that long in global politics by accident. Okay? So when Museveni looks at the US behavior under DJT, especially intervention patterns, and tells Africa this is a warning sign, he is speaking from experience, not theory. Okay? He is speaking from experience. Because Trump did not invent imperialism, but he removed the mask. Trump is just showing how America at large is eyeing at Africa. Okay? Because under DJT, Western power stopped pretending to care about democracy, to care about human rights, to care about stability. Everything became transactional. So Museveni has watched the US threat against sovereign states. Museveni has watched regime change rhetoric. Museveni has watched economic welfare disguised as sanctions. And let me tell you, Museveni understood something many Africans are only realizing. Africa is not targeted because it's weak. Africa is targeted because of it's valuable. And I wish Museveni could just retire from politics and be an advisor and sit down and advise a young, energetic leader. Because I know there's a lot of influence that is coming towards Museveni, and sometimes he takes the country as his own place. But I hope Museveni could just sit down and advise now, becomes an advisor of African continent and tell us how to deal with Western countries, how to deal with white people, how to deal with, you know what I mean? Okay? And saying hands off Africa means something. It's not just a slogan. It is a signal. Because Museveni was not speaking to Trump alone. He was speaking to Washington. He was speaking to NATO. He was speaking to intelligence agency. He was speaking to proxy NGOs. And the message from Museveni is simple and clear. If Africa remains divided, it will be controlled. And if Africa unites, it became untouchable. And Africa, we remember leaders. We remember leaders like Patrice Lumumba. We remember leaders like Thomas Sankara and Kwame Nkrumah. And every time Africa tried to stand independently, the system responded with the coups, assassinations, civil wars, death traps. And Museveni knows this pattern. So Museveni warnings is rooted in this history. And he's saying this, do not be naive again. Because Africa is changing. Not tomorrow, but now. Now, I mean, as far as sometimes we don't resonate along with Museveni, but we don't take all words, okay? We don't take all words. Museveni knows something. For example, if let me talk something about AFRICOM. AFRICOM was never about protection. AFRICOM is about to control the flags. And there's a video I just watched where one Ugandan guy is saying that they fear US flag more than Ugandan flag. What does that mean? There is fear and tension that is imposed on African people, African youths, African mothers. Whenever they hear US, they hear something great. But let me tell you, the youths of Africa right now are rising up. They are waking up. And this terrifies the system so much. Okay? So Museveni understands this because Uganda has been both a partner and Uganda has been a target too. And that's why his words carry a lot of weight. Okay? And these warnings were not for diplomats. It was for African youths. Because the next phase of Africa's struggle will not be fought with speechless alone. It will be fought with uniforms. It will be fought not with uniform. It will be fought with unity, information, economic independence, and cultural confidence. And it's only African youths who can carry all this mantle together. African youths, they can unite. We talked one language from Kenya to Tanzania to Uganda to all the way to Ghana. We can easily access information more than this older generation. Okay? And we need the help of diaspora. This is where diaspora comes in. What happens in Africa always determine global black power, economic leverages, cultural sovereignty. So the fact that we are going in election in Uganda, let this message don't be your eye opener to choose Museveni. I don't want you to choose Museveni, or I don't want you to choose Bobby Wine. I want you to choose freedom. Choose freedom. Okay? But I want you to know that this video or this message from Museveni, the warning about America and everything, it's great. We cannot we cannot just shy away from that message because it is Museveni speaking. We will listen to it because Museveni has lived in both system, the system that is partner and the system that is a threat. And right now he can advise, he can advise. Now, Africa is no longer asking right now. Africa is not begging. Africa is asserting. And Museveni's message, whether people like him or not, it reflects a continental awakening. And once Africa wakes up fully, there's no going back. Tell me what you think on the comment section about that warnings from Museveni. Peace out.